Welcome to the Exhaust Notes Podcast.
What is good? Welcome back to the Exhaust Notes Podcast. My name is Nick Engvall. I'm with my guys, Rohit and Todd, to talk some Formula One. This has been like the craziest week of news, and not even just liveries and nonsense, but just a lot of things going on, a lot of stuff to talk about. So how you guys doing? Welcome to the show. What's good?
No, I'm doing great, Nick, and it's exactly like you said. We have certain weeks where it's a lot of soft news, like liveries, sponsorship deals. But then we get this sort of week where it's all hard news. And Todd and I were chatting, and you were also kind of there in terms of, is this an overcompensation of how last year ended? And is this Formula One's attempt to get back some of the viewers that they may have lost based on how things went down last year? But we'll get to that. Todd, how are you?
Fantastic. Ready to talk, race cars and such.
Yeah, it is definitely a possibility. I think that would be like the perfect precursor for the episode, because there seems to be a lot of, let's just say, reactionary changes and reactionary actions from the lingering thought of, oh my God, what happened? Like on the last race of last year. So.
No, it's exactly that, because as a wrestling fan, there's an internal debate that a lot of us go into where, how do we view wrestling? Do we view it as a sport in the sense that it's athletes competing against one another? Or do we view it as Vince McMahon would like us to view it, which is sports entertainment, having a predefined result that you don't really care how we get to the result. It's much like Formula One and any sort of good road trip. It's all about the journey. So I think Michael Massey last year tried to do his best Vince McMahon impression coming off the Montreal screw job. And this is me getting really inside baseball, inside wrestling. But I am really interested to see where we are, because this seems to be as much of an inflection point for Formula One because of the fact that you have, dare I say, a third of the viewers this year are going to be brand new. And a lot of them have been viewers or have become fans, rather, off the back of Netflix and catching the occasional race. This will be their first season where they're going to follow it end to end. And I wonder how many of them are going to appreciate the actual science behind it, because I think last year was more of a year where we got to appreciate the artistry, especially when it came to some of the results that we obtained at the end of the season.
Totally.
Keeping the wrestling theme, I think the new FIA president is definitely a heel.
Oh, okay. Talk to us. What exactly makes him a heel to you?
Oh, man. He came in right after the Abu Dhabi results, and when Mercedes was doing their protest, as they should have based on the race results, he almost like dismissed it and was like, I'm here. I'm laying down the law. It was just came in, kicked the door open, big thing, swinging kind of attitude. So I feel like he's definitely playing the heel card right now.
Yeah, absolutely. He's walking in like Conor McGregor, Vince McMahon, with like no chance in hell, blaring in his internal stereo system.
Yes, sir.
And yeah, it's one of those things. Before we go a little bit further down, because I think this is going to be the bulk of our journey for this episode, I wanted to say that, in some of the other podcasts that we do, we like to read out reviews. But for me, I actually got it first. One of the listeners from our other podcast, the Sneaker History Podcast, reached out to me via Instagram, just let us know how he's been an admirer of all things fast and all things speed. And because of this podcast, he's going into the Formula One season. And he's already one up me because he got that Formula One TV subscription. So Miggy has it. Thank you so much, Miggy, for your support on both of our podcasts. And I will be using your DM as a plagiarized review for iTunes, which is also a reminder for our 5 or 10 listeners. Please leave us a review if you haven't already, because we need that valuable iTunes money and that iTunes visibility.
Yeah, there's
thanks, Maggie.
We're sitting at 9 right now, so hopefully by next episode we got 10. We got a couple to read. Yeah,
it'll be Miggy's review that'll carry us to the 10th.
Exactly. Thanks, Miggy.
So you guys think we should start off with the liveries? We got another 4 this week.
Tradition is tradition.
Okay, hold on.
Break us off some of that livery. Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
But I have to ask, because Rohit slipped in a pretty hot take there in that intro, and I don't know if you noticed, but a third of viewers as new viewers.
Oh, yeah.
So
I was going to gloss over
under a third of viewers being new viewers for this season. I mean, it's a bold prediction. But
Yeah, but I mean, like, there's no way to accurately do it. So I'm embracing my inner Stephen A. Smith because I realize ultimately hype and hot takes get us viewers, and we're still in the infancy of this podcast. So I am all about making these bold proclamations, especially if it results in pie in my face, because then that means the listeners can make fun of me. And the more listeners we have, the less I care about me having pie on my face. So yeah, we have a third new viewers. We're going to get that third Red Bull team. 5 dudes are going off the grid next year. What else? Any hot takes you need from me, you let me know. Your boy's ready.
So by that math, so the Abu Dhabi series finale last year was 108.7 million viewers. Oof. You're thinking there's going to be 30 million new fans.
So my preface was, I think 33 new full-time fans, like 108 million, right? That was
Abu Dhabi's viewership numbers. Yeah.
Right. And obviously, unless you have that top secret information around, okay, yeah, we can scientifically accurately predict that of that 108, 15 this was their first race that they were viewing, or this was within that 1 to 10 race range. I think this is a year where we see a big conversion of full-time race watchers. But you can already hear me backpedaling, so there you go.
No.
That's reasonable, though.
I feel like you're backing it up pretty strongly. Yeah.
I mean, look.
Hype me up, guys. I need this.
We have, a couple dozen people that have listened to this podcast, and we have probably 4 or 5 people that have messaged us and said, hey, I'm going to pay attention now, which if that scales, and we get to 1.08 million listeners by the end of the year, of course it's 30 million. Like, no brainer.
If we get 108 million listeners, I will get a full Formula One themed tattoo. And I don't like tattoos, but I will get a full sleeve if we get that upper echelon of listenership.
Well, that's the motivation from now on. We just need people to understand the value of listening to this podcast. Let me be Cyril
Bidu and let our listeners be the honey badger that we always reference. Get that podium, listeners.
If we get 108 million
we're all getting matching tattoos.
I'll get a full Bernie Eccleston on my back, just of him like Steve-O giving the thumbs up. I'll get Bernie Eccleston doing the same thing. And he's not an attractive man.
And then next season, when we're all single again, it's going to be an even greater adventure for all of us. Anyways, Nick, please rein us in because we're about to go crazy this episode because I have a feeling that hot takes are going to be hot and heavy.
I mean, I think Todd was on the pace, so like, Todd, you could start us off with liveries because we got 4 of them to get through, right?
Yeah, there's 4 new ones. So let's start with AlphaTauri. I'll save mine for last. What do you guys think?
Was it you, Todd, that played the Uno reverse card? Yeah. So that's all I need to say about it. Like, I always like this white and navy concoction that AlphaTauri does. And I think it's decent enough branding that they're in the Red Bull extended universe, but they are kind of their own thing. So that being said, we've waxed poetic about their 2 drivers and how they're both exciting. So I hope that the natural trajectory for that team is resulting in both of them getting podiums, meaning we'll see more of this livery. And I don't think it's that bad. I think for now it's probably in the top 5. How many liveries have we gotten in total? 8 or 7?
Well, Red Bull is fake. So
that's true.
I mean, Red Bull delivery was real, but the car was fake. So we've seen
8, right?
Yeah. 8 because we're still waiting on Alfa Romeo and Alpine.
Yeah.
But you think top 5?
As of right now.
Okay.
Because like I said, I have to get familiar with some of the other ones. I may have dropped off. Like, I'm excited to see how Williams livery looks because I just got the initial glance on it and I don't have an opinion. So as I'm stalling for time, I'm also typing Williams livery in my Google to see if I can come up with any sort of opinion.
All right.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Nick,
I think the AlphaTauri I think it's great, but I feel the same way towards it as I do towards the Red Bull, where it's like, all right, it's not like old in any way. I just feel like I expected it to be about like this. There's little things that are different from last year, but it's not. There's no wow factor to it. It's like, cool, AlphaTauri's back. Cool, Red Bull's back. That's how I feel about both of those.
Okay, fair. Back to the Uno reverse card. I saw that posted by WTF1. They are hilarious. So check them out.
Definitely.
If you want to. But yeah, the AlphaTauri, I would actually say it's a step back from last year. And I'm going to say for one specific reason, they're missing the off-colored logo. So Nick went into this deep on the last podcast. I think the red Honda powered by Honda logo on the side of the car with the white wheels and the matte navy and white car of last year was head and shoulders above this car. It's got the HRC logo on the back, which I like, but that off-color red pop, it was the only off-color logo last year, and it was perfection. I liked the matte navy with the white wheels last year, and it's not bad. I have some qualms about like the curved AlphaTauri up the side pod. I think that's a little weird. I think they could have kept it straight. But I don't know, probably like a 6.9 out of 10.
All right. I do agree though. Like
nice.
the red is the red is definitely like some sort of flavor, right? Like the two X's on the flex box just don't cut it on the front, winglet. Like that's the only other color on the car, which is kind of but I don't know. Okay,
so across the board, kind of a meh reception.
Yeah. Like it's a beautiful car. It's what you would expect from a bazillion-dollar Formula One team, but like it's also not creative in any way. There's nothing that's like, oh, that's cool. How come nobody else did that?
Yeah. Okay, let's move it on to Williams.
So Williams, to me, if we have some NHL listeners, it kind of reminds me of the Seattle Kraken color scheme where we've got the light blue lettering followed by a dark blue background. But it also looks like the greatest Pepsi can that never was, and as a Coca-Cola guy, I on principle alone hate it. So keep on sucking, Williams.
Nick, any thoughts?
I don't know how to follow that up, to be honest.
You shouldn't. You should just be professional, Nick. Let the jester play.
I mean, I don't know. It's fine. It's better than last year's car, I think. But again, like I just don't feel like I've been wowed, and I expected to because of the drastic changes in the car itself. If that makes sense. Like I expected the color designers to like lean into the new car in ways that I wasn't expecting. And I feel like everything is basically kind of just like, cool. Like, we're back again.
Okay, fair. I have mixed feelings on it. I like the design they did. Kind of going back to Rohit's point with the multiple shades of blue. Mm-hmm. I didn't get a Seattle Kraken vibe at all because they don't have like the Mariner green in there, but
that's
I like the diamond shapes on the back and the weird different gradients of blue on it, but it's just a blue car. There's like to Nick's point, like the new cars are so radically shaped different that they could have done so much. Like throw a random pop in one of those diamonds of different color. Mm-hmm. Mercedes does a pretty good job of throwing random pops of color to make their livery stand out. Like the red star for Nikki last year. That I don't know. Yeah, it's just kind of blah. I would actually say it's worse than the AlphaTauri, but not much. Maybe mid sixes.
I mean, it's so I have to say, like back when I had dreams of being a race team years and years and years ago in Honda Challenge and all those things, we actually mocked up like a truck and trailer and a CRX to like kind of pitch the idea to people, right? It's like, hey, this is what we want to do. We want to go racing. And we almost used a very similar like color palette and like split the car up. Like the top down view of this car reminds me of those things that we mocked up because we kind of went with like this, like three colors across everything, like this almost like tricolor, but like, just like basically royal blue, white, and black were the colors we wanted to go with. And I say all that to like say like they came pretty close with the colors, but I just feel like they just missed the mark somehow. And the only view that I like really kind of like is the top down view, because it actually like looks like the car is broken up into 3 separate colors. But I'm not a fan of the like diamond, and I'm not a fan of like the crisscross behind the driver either. It just feels like you could have just done something better there, you know.
I don't know. I also get kind of Toro Rosso vibes from it. Maybe because I was watching season 1 of Drive to Survive again in anticipation of today's episode. But I was like, this just feels like an update of that. And Toro Rosso used to be the team that we now know as AlphaTauri. So it's a no for me, dog.
I wish they still were sponsored by Martini and Rossi.
Yep.
Because like the Martini and Rossi Williams from, what is that, 2017, I think, before they went toothpaste. Was so good. It was, I mean, I know it was a terrible car, but it was such a good looking car. So we need more iconic style liveries like that.
So if I can use that as a segue, can we use this as a jumping off point to talk about arguably my favorite livery of the year, which is the new Ferrari F175? Because my goodness, like they understood the assignment. The red is popping. There's none of that gradient BS. It is a classically Ferrari car in the best way imaginable. And I know there's a little bit of internet vitriol based on the black numbering of the 55 and I think the 16 of Charles Leclerc, but I think it's great. But what are you guys feeling about the Ferrari livery?
I mean, I think I would look at that livery and think, oh, they got it right. That means the drivers are going to feel good and perform well. Like I might want to backtrack on some of my predictions just because of how good the car
I'm convinced they listen to our podcast. Like we need to update the livery to make sure that the predictions that the boys at Exhaust Notes have made get justified, because this is a championship winning car for both driver and constructor.
It's a 10. It's a mother and 10. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's perfection, but it's damn near. The giant shell logo on the side of that car is just perfectly placed. As you mentioned, Rohit, the red is just a perfect color. It seems like they're getting a little bit darker as they go on in the years. They had that weird gradient last year, which didn't look good, but that shade of red is just perfect. And then with the black wing and the black front wing and rear wing, it's damn near perfect.
It's quintessentially Italian is how I describe it.
Yep.
And I think to Nick's point as well, to borrow the old Deion Sanders line, you look good, you feel good, you play good, and you play good, you party good as well. So I am expecting as big of a comeback season as Ferrari is going to have this year, because they've got the driver lineup set up. They have their technical issues seemingly out the window, and now they've got the car to boot. But yeah, this is top one, and all due respect to Alpine and Alfa Romeo, I don't think anybody is going to be unthroning this king.
Yeah, I would be shocked if either of the last 2 cars comes out and I feel any more like they got it right than this. And I don't understand. Like I saw some of the pushback on the black numbers, and I don't really understand that. Like I actually think the black on that car makes it look so much better than I would have ever imagined myself. But like, I mean, it's got everything, right? It's just
that solid. If it was solid red, like, tip to tail, it wouldn't look as good. It needs that offset black, like on the floor, on the wings.
Yeah.
To make it. And I don't mind the black numbering either. Maybe it'll be weird in night races. I don't know. We'll see. But
no, I think final thing for me is the new gold standard for liveries for me is wishing that Lego would do a constructor set of this particular colorway, and that McLaren colorway looks nice in Lego form. If they had done this for Lego, I would have bought 2 sets, because this is just beautiful. And the more I talk about it, the more I sound like a fanboy. So I'm going to stop talking, and we'll go from the stylistic king to probably the Formula One king. Mercedes was the last one to reveal a livery this week, right, Todd?
It was. And it was, to me, a rehash of 2 years ago. My first reaction that I said in the Discord was I missed the black. I know they did it for a special reason, good reason, in support of Lewis Hamilton's like equal rights fight and all of that stuff. And I didn't like last year's car with like the 412 AMG logos all over it. I guess they were trying something, didn't work, but the year before that was just such a good livery. And I know they're called the Silver Arrows. That's been the team name from when they stopped using paint as the country color representation when they used to do back in the 60s. But it's just, I don't know. The colors are fine. I like the Ineos green, teal, whatever you want to call it, the little stripe. It is good, but yeah, I don't know. I do like the hits of red on the airbox intake and other places. I think that looks good, but they could have, like Nick said earlier, they could have just done better, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I think it's tough because I think that Mercedes has the best like three primary colors of all the teams, right? Like that black, silver, and that like kind of like Tiffany-ish blue green it's like a beautiful combo, right? When it's done right. And I say that also, keep in mind that like my favorite colors are orange and blue, and McLaren has had those colors for, however long. But like, I feel like this one is like, I'm not a fan of the Mercedes logos are better than the AMG logos, but like, that's just overkill to me in a lot of ways. And I feel like they just could have, I don't know, like, it's almost like, excuse me. It's almost like the teal color, right? Could be like so much more a part of the, like, as opposed to just a stripe, right? Or just a, Petronas logo or whatever it is. Like, there's just so much room to incorporate that. And I'm, I like the black too, but I also totally understand the silver. Nostalgia for Mercedes fans, obviously. You probably don't want to go too far from that for very long because you've basically built your entire history around it. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm, kind of sounding like a fanboy for the Ferrari car, but like that's the only car that really had a wow factor to me so far. There are elements of all of them that I think were cool, but this one for Mercedes, it's beautiful, but it's also just like kind of what I would expect from Mercedes.
I think to go back to a couple of episodes where we were coming up with those cross sport and cross pop culture comparisons, this to me is Mercedes embracing their San Antonio Spurs, where they know their basic color scheme. They know that they are the epitome of efficiency and execution in this sport. So I don't think they spent that much time on it because they are probably focused on bigger and brighter things. But yeah, I purposely don't have an opinion on this because I know how successful Mercedes is going to be in the upcoming season. So I will be sure to get a lot of exposure to this livery, much the same way a lot of our fans will, because we expect them to win almost every race, if not every race that they're going to be in. I think ask me around mid-season how I feel about this, and maybe based on Mercedes' success, I will have an answer conversely or inversely related to that. But at the same time, I think it's fine. It's an also-ran, which is weird because no aspect of Mercedes is an also-ran, but I get it. They want to regain their crown, so let's just get this done, move on to bigger and better.
Good summarization. But yeah, the Ferrari, last thing I'll say, the Ferraris, I agree, Nick, 100%. The only car that had the wow factor, not only from like the livery design and that perfect shade of red, but the design of the side pods that look like a little baby bathtub or whatever with the louvers in there. Yeah. It's just exotic looking and aggressive and, curvy and feminine at the same time. I don't know. I guess it's what Ferrari does on the road cars. So it makes sense.
Yep. So if you guys don't mind me asking, what are your top three now that we've seen a majority of the grid? I think for all of us, I would say we have Ferrari as our number one. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess the diverging opinions may be around 2 and 3. So, Nick, who's your second and third favorite livery thus far?
I mean, McLaren's probably second, but I think it's more colors for me than it is the livery itself.
No, that's fine. I mean, you like what you like. We can't force you to be otherwise.
And honestly, like, just about anything could be thrown in the mix at that point after, right? I mean, I'd probably go honestly with the Mercedes, despite trashing it for the last 5 minutes. But it's the thing that annoys me about the Mercedes is all the Mercedes logos on the back half of the car. It just, I don't know. Like, there's something about like to bring into like a, you know, my streetwear sneakers world, right? When you look at a site like Hypebeast compared to a lot of the other sites that are out there that are news feeds of things, like the beauty is in the simplicity of it, right? You only need to see, you know, the Mercedes word mark and the AMG logo to know that like this is what they're about. And I feel like I felt this way last year too, but I feel like the multi logos is just like trying too hard. You know, not to like take it so far back, but like it's like Rogue Status, you know, like back when, you know, Rogue Status was selling all those T-shirts with the guns, multi-print, all over print guns on them and stuff. And it's just like, yeah, we don't need all that. You know, like we're good. Like we went through that era. Like let's not try to go back there.
Fun side tangent. I used to have a Rogue Status shift knob in one of my cars.
Nice.
The up down smiley face with the X'd out eyes. Yep. Yeah. Or I guess it was sad face. But anyway, yeah, I would say Ferrari easily number one. I would at this time even put the Mercedes over the McLaren. It's starting to fade on me. Obviously, we know my fandom of McLaren, but it's just that rear quarter section, like on the floor where the orange and blue swoop up, is just, it feels undone to me. Maybe that alternate livery we saw in the presentation will be better. But yeah, I'd say it's 1 Ferrari, 2 Mercedes. And the only reason I'm saying that, kind of going back to Nick's point just now, there were so many AMG logos on the last car that like only 30 Mercedes stars on the new one feels like an improvement. And then, yeah, McLaren 3. I'm going to call my shot right now and say that Alpine's going to be in the top 3 for me, because I'm going to say that it's the exact same livery as last car, but that back half, the 3 stripes going up, is just now going to be pink. Okay. And if they keep that livery, which was beautiful last year, and then just add that pink to it, it'll be good.
Yeah, I would agree. If that's the case, I would definitely put that in the top 3.
No, I like the Alpine mention. I think they're going to do the opposite. I think they are going to use the prompt of, if there was a Bang energy can in a Formula One livery, what would that look like? Because I think we're going to get that Parisian blue with that hot BWT pink. For me, Ferrari obviously number 1, because I'm basic in that sense that I just can't add anything else that my co-hosts haven't already articulated. I'll go Aston Martin 2. I think that's really grown on me, because I do like that shade of green for whatever reason, maybe because it's not as prevalent. And then once again, to pay homage to my 2 lovely co-hosts, I'll go McLaren 3. But I think Alpine might unseat that, but I'm holding on to my expectations, hopefully being more like what Todd has called out and not what my own inner turmoil might be once I see what that livery actually looks like when it's been realized.
If Alfa Romeo ran that camo livery that they did at the shakedown, that's number 1. Like, I know they wouldn't ever, because they have corporate colors and all that jazz, but that livery, if they did, anybody had the balls to pull that off on a race car, that would be number 1 easy.
Yeah, Alfa Romeo needs to do this, because what is memorable about Alfa Romeo in the last couple of years? I mean, your whole identity has been, we will take on racers that are going to be great in 5 years, or we'll take on racers that are 5 years removed from their best. So why not split the difference, be memorable, especially with my 33% new viewers coming into the equation? Why not? Be the Formula One team from Middle America that wears camo to everything. Like, be the Walmart Formula One team where it's like, hey man, that's got Under Armour, that's got some sweet digi camo. I love it. Let's go.
That's such a great point. Oh my God. If there was an award for this podcast. And
not only that, you've got a secondary driver from China, because if we know one thing or the other, everybody loves China right now. So go for it. Like, embrace the barriers that are there and demolish them to bring a new America and a new China and a new world where we all enjoy Formula One in our Walmarts and in our Digi Camo, and it's going to be great. Make Formula One great again, Alfa Romeo. Go for the Digi Camo.
If they just took that Digi Camo and put the red Alpha logo, just like they did on last year's car, put it in red, I'll buy all their team kit, I swear.
Yeah.
I will be in Walmart with their team kit on, looking for Bang Energies.
Listen, Digicamo and Bang Energies, that's the new Netflix and chill, if you ask me. Like, what better way to commemorate your Season 4 Drive to Survive? What's in your thermos right now? Probably Bang Energy, because that's how dedicated you are to this life, Todd Yates, and I want to thank you for that. Where were we?
I mean, that's actually kind of going back to like previous episode, right? Like that's why like the art cars for Le Mans, for sports cars, and even for, like I just saw that there's a Jeff Koons BMW, like another collab BMW that's coming, right? So it's like that whole like just like crazy, just let somebody do something insane on a car gets people to pay attention and gets people to be like, whoa, what's this all about? Yeah, it looks weird as hell compared to tradition and compared to like, okay, here's the 3 colors and here's our normal sponsors. But that's how people remember things, Like, I think that's like a missing piece of Formula One's kind of new space and new audience, right? Like you could definitely expand your viewership just with those types of things. Not to say that I want to see this, but like let Cause or Futura do a car, right? That would bring in a whole new audience that's not used to watching Formula One.
Yeah, I mean, not only that, right? Prior to the last 4 years, what was everyone's perception of a Formula One fan? Euro, refined, classy individual. The more you get into the sport, you realize, yeah, that's probably the prevailing subsection of it. But there is a hint of trashiness there. And if there's one thing we as America do well, is trashy in various degrees. So this would be the equivalent of having the sequins juicy on the back of America's backside, so to speak. But I'm here for it because, like I said, Digicamo is Digicamo. I'm about that life. We're all about that life. Make it happen, Alfa Romeo.
Bring it on.
These colors don't run.
Well, speaking of, let's use that for the perfect transition, right? We now have rumors of the Andretti family fielding a team in 2024 pending approval. An American team at that. American drivers, supposedly. And it's going to be based in Italy.
Is that the 52nd state? Maybe I'm because Pluto's no longer a planet. Maybe we took over Italy. I don't know. Anyway.
So maybe we can get like the tricolor Italy flag colors. You know how Ducati does the tricolor bikes? Tricolor, sorry. We do that in Digicamo for the Andretti car in 2024.
Snow camo, desert camo, forest camo, all Digicamo.
Yeah. The crazy part is that Andretti's already do race a lot in American series, so there's plenty of opportunity for them to like expand their Walmart audience.
Their brand. I was going to say, I look at it this way, right? We've all kind of talked about how the writing might be on the wall, so to speak, for Haas in terms of maybe no longer being a solely American company. At best, they're a hybrid. At worst, they belong to the Russian Empire. But I was kind of also reading up on this proposed Andretti team. And what was interesting to me is, like Nick had mentioned, that they will be based out of Italy, but the team will also do some work out of Indiana with a separate facility in England to facilitate travel and development through a European-focused schedule. So they truly are embracing the we are the world, we are the people vibe. And I think that is going to be needed because the other thing is, what was the driver you had mentioned, Todd, that was affiliated with this? Colt?
Yeah, the early rumors, obviously everybody likes to throw out their ideas, but Colton Herter won the IndyCar series last year and has been rumored for the last year or so to maybe try out for a seat, get a test drive in a seat. He's a quick kid. I think he's like 21, 22. Pretty sure he's from here in California. But yeah, it would be awesome to have an American driver back on the grid with a American/Italian team boss and Italian, American, English racing team.
Who was the last American driver on the grid? Because I'm sure as some of our newer fans are trying to get up on it, they would love to know some of the American-based history.
I'm going to have to look that up because I believe it was in the 90s. I want to say, oh, sorry, just kidding. Alexander Rossi in 2015.
Oh,
Forgot about him. Yeah, it hasn't been that long, but
shout out to Alexander Rossi. He's done pretty well in IndyCar, and is actually from the Northern California area, up in the foothills here from Sacramento.
Oh, I wonder what his thoughts are on the Tyrese Halliburton trade.
Ouch.
Always sprinkle in the other sports.
It's a gift and a curse if you think about it, really. But what would be the realistic expectations of a team? Because I think we haven't seen a brand new team come into the sport in a while. Like, is this going to be something along the lines of they'll be fortunate to even get 1 point? Is this going to be kind of a canary in the coal mine where they're just trying to see the feasibility of this? With this last past, let's say 2 to 3 years, what would your realistic expectations be tomorrow if you both got the confirmation that, yes, coming in 2023, we will have the Andretti America team?
I think based on, Nick just mentioned that they race in everything. They're in IndyCar. I was just watching the X-Prix or whatever you want to call it, that new racing series that's like environmentally focused, and they use their all electric like desert tank things. I can't even, the MX cars. They have a team in the new X-Prix thing. They're in, I'm pretty sure, WEC. They race in every series. They are a basically racing factory. They race in all types of disciplines. So I think if they make it in, I think that they will be. We could see them as a championship winning team in a decade.
Wow. So the infrastructure is that good that it's almost like a plug and play until they get to that level of competency, and then
they need to get into the series, and they need to get development under control. But I think they have the name in Mario Andretti or the Andretti family. They can bring the sponsorship in to get up to the cost cap and be able to develop just the same as the rest of the teams. I think they can get the investment for the infrastructure. And I think they could, lure some drivers in with the name and the Americanization of F1 as we're seeing it before our eyes. The downside that I want to bring up, and I don't know if you guys read into, F1 isn't really currently accepting applications, so to speak, for new teams. So there's kind of a large hurdle. I mean, Mario Andretti said like, oh yeah, we filed the paperwork or whatever, but there's not actually like a classic, like, here's my resume, hire me as a Formula One team application process. So I think if anyone has a chance to be a new team on the grid, it would be Andretti Autosport. There's been a few, like a couple other teams that have been rumored around interest in Formula One. One of them was Campos Racing. They're a Formula 2 team now, but they're kind of a lot of talk, no action. And there's one other name I was reading about that I can't remember right now. That sounds like it's a bit of a snake oil promise as well.
Is it Rich Energy North America?
No, William Story is not going to be a new team principal, sadly. God, if he was on the grid, like as a team principal, Netflix would be just rolling in their money. Just they wouldn't know what to do with themselves. It's so
funny you mention that, because I was doing the rewatch, and the patch of episodes I got today was the Vijay Mallya episodes, and my goodness, if there was a larger-than-life parody of a villain. Like, I know sometimes we like to give Lance Stroll's dad, Lawrence Stroll, the benefit of the doubt of, okay, you're the team principal or team owner most likely to be a Bond villain. In the professional sense, in the vaguely comical, almost absurdly incompetent sense, Vijay Mallya, come on down and tell us how you're going to blow up the world as you tie us over a shark-infested pit of lasers, because, my goodness, that man knew how to play to the camera, and unfortunately that seemed to be the only thing he knew how to do properly. Allegedly. I'm not trying to get sued. Don't sue us.
I don't think he'll sue you. I'm pretty sure he's in like jail right now. I think he got extradited.
I mean, I think to Todd's point, right? Like the Andretti's racing career / team ownership, this was put out there by Mario as a thing that Michael Andretti would do, right? And, I guess for people new, that Mario Andretti has raced in damn near every form of racing that exists outside of motorcycles. He raced in Formula One. He won a Formula One championship in the 70s. He raced in NASCAR for a little bit. He raced for the Williams team at one point, like in an odd thing, I think. And then he's just an interesting character and story around racing in general. But his son, Michael, is the person that would run the Formula One team, supposedly, from the way this is kind of shaping up right now. And I think to Todd's point, I don't think that there's anybody. There's only a handful of people in racing as a whole, all forms of it, that could knock on anybody's door and say, we want to race in your, series or whatever you want to call it, right? But he's one of those people that I think everyone in any form of racing would at least have the conversation with. So, it's not likely, but it's also if you want to start a basketball league and Michael Jordan comes knocking to start a basketball league with you or own a team in your basketball league, you're like, I don't even want to have a basketball league, but if you want to own a team in my league, I will create a league for you to race in, or for you to own the team in, Michael, And I think that's the same kind of thing that will happen with him. I don't know what that will look like, Unfortunately, Haas probably won't be around unless there's some form of success in this next year or two. But, it'd be nice to see a couple of American teams to kind of bring more people into the sport. But I will say that if Andretti brings a team to Formula One, they will bring a huge, your 30 million might be an under, a very serious underestimated amount if he were to if that family were to bring a Formula One team, because they just have a diehard fan base across so many different aspects of racing. And I think it's generational too, he raced for 30 something years. Mm-hmm. His kids race, there's so many Andrettis out there in racing in various places that, it's one of those it's one of those families that you just want to be involved in your sport if you're in the sport of racing.
No, go ahead, Todd.
Oh no, you go right ahead.
No, I was just going to say this. As you guys were chatting, I wanted to understand how could one get into Formula One, and per this article, and granted it's only one article and maybe completely off base, they said there's a $200 million one-time fee to join the grid if the application is approved, which I think almost feels kind of too low, because given the explosion of how many people want to own some sort of sports team or sports club, I would imagine that may be the biggest catalyst for the grid expanding in, let's say, the next 2 decades. Because if it stays at that 200 million and grows intelligently, I think that is chump change for some of the truly world elite, which is an absurd statement to say, but I'll say it nonetheless. But I'm really interested to see that if this would be a domino, because if it is only 200 and you have that cachet of the Andretti name, then I think this will be the first of maybe 5 or 6 teams, because that seems a little too low in terms of that's all it takes to get on. Granted, I don't have 200 million in my spare couch. Todd, how about you? Do you have 200 million in your spare couch?
Fresh out.
Okay, fair enough. But what was the point before I...
No, I wanted to just double down on Nick's point about what Mario Andretti and the Andretti family means. A ton of them have raced and a ton of them have been successful, and it's tracing back to his Mario Andretti's lineage. And I just found a fun stat that I wanted to say. He remains the only driver ever to win the Indy 500, the Daytona 500, and a Formula One World Championship. So he's legit as they come. And maybe there might be one or two or three families, racing organizations that are so big that could just be like, yep, we're going to enter Formula One and get taken seriously, and he's one of them. So I think he's got a great shot, but he needs to clear that hurdle of, Formula One's basically saying, or the FIA saying like, oh yeah, we're taking applications, but he's one of the few people that could get their attention.
Fair.
Yeah, I think too, like the other part of it is, it's not just an American fan base that F1 wants, right? Like that's a huge piece of that's a huge missing piece of the puzzle for, Formula One success, right? Like absolutely. We know that there are tens of millions of people in America that don't watch Formula One but watch other racing. Like it's a safe bet, right? But also, Mario Andretti raced for a bunch of, sports cars like in Le Mans for years. So like there's this high level of racing that exists, for people that aren't familiar, like, Todd mentioned WEC, right? WEC is kind of this like sports car racing that happens. The World Endurance Challenge is what it's short for. And it's basically like, kind of the brands like Porsche and Audi and Cadillac is going to be back in it this year. And Bentley has raced there. And like, it's like this other world of racing that doesn't quite have the grandiose Netflix deal that F1 has. But the level of racing is equally as competitive and equally as impressive if you get into it. It's a little bit harder to follow because most of the races happen overseas. There's only typically like one race here in the States, which is Austin. But like the 24-hour Le Mans is obviously one of the, pinnacle races. Like that's, I think if you were to ask anybody that's a fan of racing, it's like, it's either that or Monaco, right? Those are the two races that are on everyone's bucket list to either go see or be a part of if they're lucky enough to race for, a portion of their life. But he had a lot of success too. I think like at least one or two maybe. And to me, that comparison is a little bit more interesting than the bringing Americans on board, because you've already got people that are used to watching a very complex racing series. WEC is stacked with a bunch of different levels of racing. So you've got the top tiered cars, the second tiered cars, and then you've got like traditional sports cars that look like the cars you see on the road. And like, because of that, you have a much broader audience of like, I'd say working class people that are like going to grind it out to just be able to get a little bit of extra seat time on the weekends, kind of, compared to Formula One, where we've talked about the barrier to entry, not just as a team owner and $200 million, but the barrier of entry for someone in karts that doesn't absolutely destroy the competition is like, well, you didn't destroy everyone at age 11, so probably not going to happen for you, kid. And I think that's an interesting piece of the puzzle that's kind of missing, sort of, but like also like it would be so easy to get more people to cross over from that, like, sports car racing into Formula One, was someone like this who's had massive amounts of success, traveled around the world. Like the downside to kart, Indy, NASCAR, all these things that are very, very American focused is they don't really go too far outside of the States in their races, right? It's like basically North America, occasionally South America, but not very far. And, WEC, sports car racing in general, is a much, much more worldwide form of racing that I think people could come in and understand the nuances of racing and the nuances of team ownership and the nuances of having drivers from different areas of the world, all those things. So to me, I mean, there's so many reasons why if I'm the FIA, I'm like, how could we ever say no to this?
Definitely. We are running up against time here, and we have some pretty large other news to talk about. So do you guys have any final thoughts on the Andretti thing?
No, I'm ready for you to take stage on this, because there's nobody better that can break the minutia of it.
Okay, so I think the best way to do this, because we have so much to talk about, I'm going to rattle off everything else that happened this week, and then we can pick a couple of points that pique your guys' interest to talk about. So the aforementioned heel, Mohammed bin Sulayem, the new FIA president, came out and did an announcement this week, and there was 4 parts to it. The first thing that they're doing implementing into Formula One is virtual race control room with a thing called video assisted review, which they use in football or soccer for the American folks. It's become a big deal in the Premiership in the last several years. They are removing direct radio communications from team principals to the race director. So no more Toto screaming, "No, Michael, no."
I was going to say, if we can get a drop of just him saying Michael and then counter that or compare that with Phil Jackson yelling Michael and that famous Allen Iverson quote, that'd be hilarious. But okay, go on.
The third thing he announced in the first announcement was that they were going to be basically announcing later their resolution to the unlapping cars under safety car conditions controversy that ended last season, which came out a few days later, and it was that basically they pretty much said that the rules are the rules. So every car, they would have to announce at the end of the last car that was getting unlapped, getting out of the way, that they would have to announce that the safety car was coming in at the end of the lap, which took a long time to get all the unlapped cars around the track and back in the pack. So now all they're doing is after the last car has passed the safety car, they are going to announce at the end of the next lap that the safety car will be coming into the pits. That is the final rule. There's no way around that. I'm sure that they'll change their minds and probably red flag a race, and they probably should have red flagged the last race. But anyway, we don't need to debate that. Lastly, and probably the biggest news, Michael, the aforementioned Michael Massey, is been replaced. He's been fired. He's been whatever. He's going to be offered another position within the FIA, but we have 2 new race directors that are going to alternate race weekends to try to give them a little bit more of a balanced workload. We know that we're going to have 23 races this year. One of them is from WEC that we just talked about, the World Endurance Championship, and the other one was from another big racing series, DTM. That's what it was. German touring cars. They will be assisted by Herbie Blash, who was the deputy chief race director previously. So he will be a senior advisor to both of them during race weekends. A few days later, an announcement came out that there was more penalty points. So during the course of racing, if a driver hits another driver, dangerous maneuvers, they go off track too many times, there's a million ways that people can get penalties. The penalties, depending on how egregious they are, come with penalty points. Before, if you got 12 penalty points, you got a 1 race ban. They came out with a new ruling that the drivers are going to be allowed more penalty points. I don't know if they've actually announced how many yet. Moving on, this is the biggest shakeup for me this week. There's no more Q2 tire rule. They used to have to, whatever they qualified with in Q2 during qualifying, they had to start the race with. That is no longer the case. They're free tire choice at the beginning of the race. Couple more. They have a new show and tell rule, so they have to have their car on display for the media and anyone else to see for an hour before first practice and 90 minutes after first practice on a Friday. So basically any other team can go up to their car and inspect it. So it's supposedly going to hike up the development and keep racing closer. And then lastly, not big of a deal, but I think it's cool to see, rookies must take, or their junior drivers, whoever it is for the teams, must take drive during free practice 1 at least twice during the year. So out of all the things I just said, any of those things pique your interest? Nick, you got a smirk. Let's see what you got.
I mean, I think the show and tell period before and after practice on Friday is really interesting, but I also think that it's just like this just adds to the games that will be played, right? Like you'll go out first practice, you'll show some arbitrary setup / whatever. And, if I'm Mercedes, I go out there, just, okay, cool. Like this is how it is. Red Bull comes and takes a look. And then the next day I'm, back to my normal antics. Right. But I think that's interesting. I think it's going to be funny to see like, will we be able to like spot the changes from a car from a Friday to Saturday? Because everybody's going to be able, if the public even has access to this, anybody that's there reporting, right? You're going to see images of this all over social media. So you're going to be able to be like, what? Like, what's going on? What? Oh, wow, that's way different, But also, like, I can just see I'm just visualizing Toto and Christian Horner,
Yep.
arguing over what was changed versus what wasn't versus
this is a different Pantone, Christian.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just setting it up for Netflix again, basically, right?
Anything that increases the level of petty, I think most of us are here for, because that's one of the secret delights. And yeah, Christian Horner is arguably the greatest housewife of insert your favorite city that never was, because he adds a little extra oomph when it comes to close rivals. And it's going to be really interesting to see him be in the position of the hunted as opposed to the hunter that he's been the last couple of years. I think for me, the Massey thing is probably what's going to get the most headlines, just based on the fact that a lot of people think he's the reason why the race ended up the way that it did. And to Todd's point, we can't litigate that any further. It's done. It's been exhausted. And really, we're not that. But heads needed to roll for a lot of people, and that was the biggest head. And to me, it still says something if he's still within the FIA infrastructure that, okay, yeah, you lost your job, but you're still there. So it's going to be kind of the same as it always is anytime we see some sort of widespread rule change where it's fine up until the first moment it's needed. And then once again, it turns into a bend, don't break situation. I will say this, the thing that Todd mentioned that I'm most familiar with is the VAR in American soccer or global football. And that has a really interesting effect on the game, because now anytime you see a guy or a girl score a goal, instead of basking in their exuberance and their jubilant nature of scoring a goal, their first reaction is to just kind of look around and be like, is this a goal? Is this there? And that kind of robs some of the raw emotion of the game. And I'm really interested to see what that does with F1, because of the fact that we don't have that immediate satisfaction the same way we do when somebody scores a goal in soccer. But at the same time, this is going to be where the rubber meets the road in a sense, because the first time they get it right, everybody's going to be happy. But the first time they get it wrong, that's where things are going to get petty and hectic once again, and people are going to be clamoring for more heads to roll. So it's only as good as its first mistake. And then once that first mistake is there, believe me, the gloves will be off all over the world, because sports, much like everything else, becomes extremely tribal. And it's great if my guy wins, but it's even worse if my guy loses, and loses based on a technicality. So we'll see how it goes.
I got a response for both of you. So first, to Nick's point about the show and tell thing, I did leave a little bit of detail out there that they have to basically have a list of their parts and their setup that they have to present to FIA race official. So that says, they're not going to be able to game the system. But F1 teams literally cheat to win. Like, that's almost the history of F1. It's, we saw it last year with Mercedes getting all of a sudden late season this gigantic push of speed on the straights because they found a way to like collapse their rear suspension to stall the airflow to get a higher top speed on the straights, they're going to game that system somehow. They're going to like hide some bits,
Yep.
Unlist some bits, however it works out. But I can't wait to see what that show and tell brings. And then I'm so glad, Rohit, that you brought up the Michael Massey thing, because doesn't this have to feel a little bit sour for Max? The FIA not only fired who basically everyone blamed for the season-ending controversy last year, but then changed or clarified the safety car rule that screwed Lewis out of a championship. Max is over there thinking like, or acting like he won the world title, and granted, he deserved it. He was the better race car driver over the season, but they were still level on points in that last race, and he won in that technicality that really just the FIA kind of admitted their fault by firing Massey. I think it was like everybody felt it was inevitable, but it just felt like it kind of sours Max's championship a little bit. And that's not a defense of Max, but it's gotta suck for him a little bit.
Totally. And I think there's two things that I want to bring up. I agree with that. And I think that we're going to put a team together to review things is very much a like, let's not have one person get their head chopped off for this next season approach, which, look, I would not want to be race director. Like, you're never going to, like, that's got to be one of the only thing I could think of that would be more stressful would be like, flight controller at LAX or something, like I just would not want to deal with all of the things that are being thrown at you throughout a race and after race, and how much the public just, no matter what, half of the public just absolutely hates you and despises you after every race, to Rohit's point. The other thing that I think we should clarify for people that aren't like diehard Formula One fans, or even, maybe newer Formula One fans, the level of like, let's quote air quotes cheating, right, is so minimal that like last season, Lewis Hamilton was disqualified from qualifying because of, what was it, like a 2 millimeter?
I mean, not only that.
Oh, the gap in the rear wing.
There's a gap in the rear wing of like 2 millimeters or something like that. And then there was this whole thing of like Max touched his wing afterwards. So like we had all this drama, which I'm sure we'll see in Drive to Survive this next month. But like that is like you're talking about like such a minimal amount of, like, as fans, you're not seeing that, but that's what goes on between every blink of an eye in this sport, which makes it super exciting, but also it's like so crazy detailed. And I can't remember the specifics, but I think, like essentially like they were, to your point, they were trying to get more speed. This was right around the time where they started to like pick up the speeds on the straightaway. And then it was like, oh, Max was looking at the rear wing, and then Max touched the rear wing, which is against the rules. But then it was like Lewis was disqualified for the wing being 2 millimeters over or under spec or whatever that was. And, it was like all these like things that were like, you're penalizing Lewis. The perception by showing Max touching the wing makes it seem like Max was responsible for it. Lewis came out and was like, it's not Max's fault. He didn't, like, that wasn't the case. But the FIA, fined Max and, disqualified Lewis for qualifying that day or whatever, the day before. So that's how like also petty the actual racing rules are with these teams as well. Like it's like a three-sided monster, right? It's the competitor on each side and the governing body that are like very, very petty in all of these things. Yeah. And they have to be, right? Like, because the whole sport is about gaming the system and finding that advantage. So
everybody's the smartest guy in the room until they're the dumbest, and that's Formula One in a nutshell. I think one last thing, and this will probably be my last contribution. Todd, you brought up something that I had never even thought of, which is this idea of max championship and having the asterisks. I can't say that I understand European or Asian sports culture as much as anybody, but I know one of the most prevailing topics, especially in the last decade, has been this concept and conversation around quote unquote rings culture and how certain titles are vindicated or not vindicated given the circumstances of who was injured or who was not and who was suspended and who was not. I will say this. If the American fan base flocks to this sport as we think it does, Max Verstappen hasn't won a title then, because we are very petty as a people, and we are going to be the first ones to call out the fact that, nah, bruh, that didn't count. Your boy Massey got you the title. So just something interesting to see as well how Netflix shapes that narrative, because for a lot of us that are getting up to speed with the sport, we're going to use Netflix as our initial point of reference until we have the actual 10,000 hours, so to speak, of watching racing, watching the quality, watching the actual race. So, yeah.
That's a great point. I think we could talk about the Houston Astros. We could talk about Bond's home run title.
Exactly.
We love an asterisk.
We love the concept of an asterisk because it allows us to talk about sports more than anything. And if there's one thing we as people love more than watching sports, is talking about sports and how my guy's better than your guy. And once again, these goddamn barriers that were put up have proven to me that my guy is the right guy. So it's the best way of filibustering as well as campaigning for your person. So.
Hell, half of the freaking United States doesn't credit Kevin Durant with titles because he played for the Warriors.
There you go.
What? Oh, yeah, super team.
One person I also wouldn't want to be, to Nick's point, is the dude directing this season's Drive to Survive. How much of a walking on eggshells type of situation do you have to be? Because you have to please Formula One, but you also need to sensationalize it because Drive to Survive is just the Kardashianism of Formula One. It's got to be dramatic, but they also can't say like, oh, this dude screwed up and his title isn't real. Like, it's, oh man, I can't wait to see how they handle that. It'll be weird and very challenging to do because I don't know if you guys know, but Max doesn't partake in Drive to Survive. He has excluded himself from that. So they can't really tell that narrative from just Lewis's point of view. Oh, it's going to be super interesting on how they really do that.
I know I said I was not going to talk, but I'm going to talk. So damn it, Todd. I will just say this. The last two seasons of Drive to Survive would have been the last monologues of every season. Lewis waxing poetic about his dominance, and then also the fact that this is still a hashtag very white sport, and we need to improve the diversity of it. If I'm Max, or more importantly, if I'm Red Bull PR, I tell Max, like, hey, you need to break this non-speaking thing because you need to be able to tell your story because, as we all know, the victor gets to tell the spoils because victory is always going to control the narrative. If he doesn't do that and he allows Lewis that platform to rightfully rail against this conspiracy, and assuming Lewis does it, that's further going to drive the wedge, so to speak, that Lewis is the hero and Max is the villain in this. So...
I mean, I think that's exactly what I was thinking as Todd was talking. I mean, by not speaking about these things, you know, you almost play into Netflix and F1's, you know, storyline of you being the villain, right? Because you just don't participate. The only person I can think of that just said, I'm not going to participate and didn't end up the villain is Kimi Räikkönen. So until we see Max falling off of a yacht into the harbor in Monaco, you know, he's got to figure out a way to like at least elevate his narrative somehow to be a part of it. Right. Because it's definitely it's an interesting thing that we don't look at those types of things in hindsight historically, but at the same time, we really do, right? We know, you know, let's say Michael Jordan, right? We know Michael Jordan played both sides of the card when it comes to like, you know, where he's putting his money and speaking for people or speaking for the businesses or speaking for, you know, whomever. And like, it used to not matter because nobody cared what these guys did off of the, you know, off of the field or off of the, you know, racetrack. But now, I mean, we see all of it. Social media has changed all that. So you want to see like how people are and who they are. So yeah. I don't know.
That's a great point, and it wouldn't matter if he was racing for P17 and was 16 years removed from his last championship like Kimi was. But Kimi was that caricature of a racing driver for 20 years, and Max is now a first-time world champion. And I mean, I think he's trying to play it like this was my championship. I performed all season. Whatever happened in the last race, it happened. And that's true. That's a part of racing. He didn't do anything wrong, but it's got to feel a little sour, like I said.
Yeah, totally.
One final thought. Rohit, give me 2 words on Otmar Safnauer, confirmed as Alpine team principal.
I will just say this. Stabilizing move. Otmar, how do you say his last name? Because I always butcher it.
Otmar Safnauer.
Safnauer is boring in the best way imaginable, where he's not going to get headlines the same way Christian Horner will, but he is a coach in the mindset of, I'm going to let my drivers do the talking. And if I need to be involved, I will, but I'm very hands-off in the sense of, I can't win the press conference, but I hope my drivers win the race, because that is ultimately success for him. And per Netflix's Drive to Survive, he has one of the most amazing car collections that even the likes of Gunther Steiner are very envious of, because I think there was that famous bet of, if my guy beats your guy, you have to let me drive one of your cars. And I think Aston Martin still won. So I don't know what Gunther had to give up, but
that's great. Yeah, I agree. He's an American born. Well, he's an American citizen. Very Midwest, laid back vibes, like you said. He, I think, is a great stabilizing presence, like Rohit said, on the team, because the top structure of Alpine with their 3-headed monster of, God, I can't even remember their names right now. They need that kind of stability there, and I think it's a huge win for Alpine. Nick, any thoughts?
Agreed
on Otmar?
Nothing more. Rohit said it perfectly, I think. But yeah, I mean, I think that'd be an interesting episode to potentially get into in the future, is like talking about race directors or team principal, all these kind of faces behind the drivers, even on the the Helmut Marko side, right? Like we've alluded to some of these characters that play big roles and show up in certain places, but we don't always see them. So I think we could definitely do like a little a tour of the teams, faces, putting names to faces and talking about what they actually do.
We'd just talk about Christian Horner's wife.
Yeah.
She's a Spice Girl, if you didn't know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and Ferrari's what is it, Mattia
Binotto.
Binotto, yeah. I think he's like one of my favorite characters, but not. There's nothing like exciting about him, but he's just I don't know. He's just like an interesting like figure in this world of like super over the top macho, Toto and Christian Horner kind of people.
That's a great call. And his Kramer-esque hairstyle, is just I don't understand it, but he pulls it off somehow, and he's like some weird mad scientist looking kind of quirky Italian dude. Yeah, I think that would be fun to talk about race directors.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, that's a pretty solid episode. I hope you all enjoyed it. Make sure that you connect with Rohit and Todd. Let them know how they can connect with you guys outside of the podcast.
I'm on Instagram at RoadM13, on Twitter at Roheezy, and right now I'm trying to keep my baby from getting louder. So I will see you guys.
At T-Easy on Instagram. Nick, where can I find you?
At Nick Ingval on all the platforms. Make sure you're following at Exhaust Notes FM and exhaustnotes.fm for all the podcast episodes. And we'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.
Peace.